Welcome back to the channel, you big bass lovers. It's Demont coming back at you again. Um, as per promise, I want to go over some bad information that I've seen another YouTuber give. I don't want to give the name. They're a lot bigger channel than I am, but I guess they're trying to dip their toe in something they haven't done before. I've been doing a free rig. That's about the time, I don't know. I've been doing free rig for about the last 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. I don't know. Free rigging's always been one of my favorite techniques. I didn't grab a lot of baits out and stuff. I just want to try to give you kind of like just a little bit of rod, reel, line. I like to throw a little more of the free rig of the finesse side. Kind of like a little TRD kind of bait. So this is the BLT, the Ned BLT. I also like to throw like scented jerk shads. This is the 5-inch. They recently came out with a 3.5-inch version of the scented jerk shad, which is basically the same thing as the Strike King Zoo 2, except with scent. And I'm going to repurpose this rod. This is the Zodius 7'2" medium light. I think this would make a really good free rig rod. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off. I have better rods that are better suited for throwing small little swim baits. All right, so let's go over kind of what you're gonna need. What I've seen the other channel do is he was using a big bass sinker with the big eye, an EWG. I think he was actually using a worm hook, I'm sorry. A worm hook and basically a flat worm, no bobber stopper, no anything to keep the lure above the weight. And he was just basically saying he doesn't see much difference between it and Texas rigging. And there is a huge difference between free rigging and Texas rigging. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get into, I forgot to bring, I really like throwing the VMC Neko. People say it different ways. I don't know. But it's a VMC Neko finesse hook. I like the size 1/0 to 2/0. But I also like the VMC. This is the ringed wide gap hook. I wish they would make a ringed one of those little Neko hooks. I also like the skip gap hook. Or any of your other little finesse hooks, or you can use a regular hook, depends on how you want. You can free rig using bigger weights, bigger baits. You can even free rig using, I've been pretty successful using a jerk bait free rigging. I'm not talking about a soft jerk bait, I'm talking about a hard jerk bait. This is one of my favorite little sinkers. It's the Decoy. This is 1/8 ounce. You can also get away with opening up, and it has to be a round eye. Let me go now so I can show you what I'm talking about here. And you can't use a big eye like a bass sinker. That's too big. All right. This is one of the Decoy's little drop shot weights. But you see how it has that little round eye? And I'm gonna show you, you don't want a big eye, you want a small eye like this one. You can actually get by with a little opening up one of your little crimped drop shot eyes. I've seen people going up with their hook point and just like put the hook in it and just take the hook and kind of round it out. But anyway, First thing you're going to do is you're going to put your weight. This is 8-pound test fluorocarbon. You're going to run your line through your weight. Now, next thing is probably very important. If you're using a ring die, you do not need a bobber stopper, but I would still recommend putting a bobber stopper on. But if you're wanting, it still protects the knot. It still protects the bait from getting too close, but I always like to use a bobber stop. The bobber stop gives you, let's say you're not using a Z-Man. It gives you a way of controlling the fall. So we're going to get us a bobber stopper. If you never put a bobber stopper on, you're going to run your line. You see the little loop right there on the bobber stopper. You're going to run your line through the loop. Then you're going to grab the bobber stopper with your line, and you're going to pull it off onto your line. All right, now you see your bobber stoppers on the line. And see what this is important to do is this keeps your weight from going to your hook. And you can use different, I like to slide up a little bit at this point in time. I'm going to demonstrate using the skip gap because this is one of my favorite this is one of my favorite hooks before I found the Finesse Nico. And that's why I kind of grabbed this. This is out of my free rig box. These are my free rig box. The little ring hook was in my free rig box. My Finesse Necos are in my drop shot, several other kind of boxes. Okay, we're gonna come on here. We're going to, I like to use a jam knot. When I do my jam, I like to lay my line like this right here. I like to pull it tight between my fingers. I'm just tying on a hook. When you're tying on like a crankbait or something, it's a lot easier. You want to go around 7 times. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm going around both sets of lines 7 times. When you've gone around 7 times, you're going to go through the bottom. Then you're going to go back out through the top. Right there like this. And it's basically a clinch knot. I also like to use a Pitson knot. Pitson and a jam are very similar, just different functions. Put a little lubrication on it. Then we're going to tighten down your jam knot. Then we're going to trim off your excess. All right, one of my favorite little baits to use is a little TRD. Like with this skip gap hook, you're gonna go in right like that. You're gonna come out. Oops, I came out the wrong side, I'm sorry. Wasn't paying attention. When you're using like the Ned, a Z-Man, it's not that important. But with this, since it has a clear flat and clear top, I guess you could use it either way. I just want to make sure I'm keeping it kind of somewhat neat for demonstrations. All right, so then you lay your skip gap on your bait. You're gonna come through. And I like to, when I'm using like a Elastec kind of plastic, I like to kind of sometimes I bury it in the middle. I don't do this right here. Don't Texas rig it. But what you need to do, as you can see, is it's kind of almost very similar to a Finesse Carolina rig right now. But you can actually move this weight, move your bobber stopper up and down a little bit. I recommend like lubing it and putting a little bit of spit behind wherever you want to move it to so you don't like fray your line up. But you want to keep it a minimum of about 1 inch to 2 inches away from your knot. You're not on your hook here. This gives it enough space when you pick your line up. See, when your sinker hits the bottom, when you pull it, it's hard to say. It's going to pull your line back to where your sinker is. But what he was doing is he didn't have this on here, so the weight was staying right by the worm. Instead of this worm like floating up in the air, like, and it doesn't have any flutter. Especially when you have a big eye, and that big eye is basically sitting on top of your hook eye, almost pinching it together and keeping it together, it doesn't work that good. And it's not going to have the separation. That's not a free rig. That's just putting a bass caster on a line and throwing a worm with it. Let's bring the bobber stopper down. Usually I keep mine about right there, about 3 to 4 inches is about where I have my bobber stopper at when I'm doing my free rig. I like, when I'm doing finesse baits, I'm usually throwing TRD. I'm throwing a Palmetto Bugs is another thing I like to throw in here. Anything it glides, kind of like your hover rig. But this is more bottom focused kind of hover rig. And as you see, it'll stay basically that much off the bottom. Like imagine this is the bottom, that's where your weight is. And then if I throw slack to it, which means I move my rod tip down to it, and I put slack in my line, it's going to allow this to back up. And it'll go up. Let's say your fish, a lot of times I'm pitching this. I'm pitching around shore cover. Let's say I see a laydown that's sitting 90 degrees to the bank. I pull up, I get about a good 30 feet from the tree limb, from the front of the tree. And I'll pitch my free rig up to the tree. I've seen that tree falling down. I know it's got branches all over it. I will throw this out. I will let it like slowly pendulum down in front of the tree branch. In front of the front part of the tree. The top of the tree, in other words. It'll come down and it goes, woo, and as you pull the slack out of your line, and then this will be sitting on the ground, you throw slack back to it, and the Elastec floats, so it's going to slowly rise back up through the tree. Then you pull it back again. I think you guys can see what I'm talking about. You can actually work this bait right in front of that tree for a long time. And you can, if you want to. And you can just keep sitting there moving it up and down. Up and down. Like here's your bank, your bed of the floor, your bed of the lake, creek, pond, whatever. See, it's going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. Wish I could show you by using my rod tip. But that's what I didn't like in his video. He's like showing people an incorrect way to fish. One of my favorite ways, I guess you would say. And this was stupid. I'm like, why are you doing it this way? The only weights I use on a free rig, I use 1/8, 3/16, and 1/4. That's the only weights I get for a free rig. Because the weight is not usually that paramount. It all kind of dictates your fall and dictates if it's really windy, then I'm going to go to that 1/4. If it's really deep where I'm trying to fish the free rig, which I really don't fish the free rig that deep, but I'll put on 1/4. If I'm fishing like 10 foot deep, I'm using usually a 3/16 usually. But normally, the 1/8 ounce right there is all you really need. And like I said, it's going to basically just keeps your bottom contact. And then you can let it kind of go up and down, up and down, up and down. You kind of see how free, that's why it's called a free rig. You can see how the bobber stopper stops it and it keeps it above your weight. You don't want this sitting on top of your weight. Because if you're doing that, you might as well be fishing a Texas rig. So, and pretty much, let me show you this real quick. I'm gonna move this bobber stopper up. So if, well, I don't need to move it up. If you're using one of these ring dies, I really like these ring guys. I throw this ring guy with the rhythm wag when I'm doing like finesse jerk baiting. It gives it a lot more action. And I also throw this finesse, this ring die. They did this hook right. I don't know if you can see this. See how high the point is compared to your neck. It has enough bite so when that fish comes and closes their mouth, it's not sitting parallel. It's sitting where it's going to dig in to the roof of that fish's mouth. You never want that point to be below or even with this bend, your neck of your hook. Because when you rig it, it makes your bait sit flat. But what I was trying to say before I started doing this is that when you tie this on, sorry guys, got up really early this morning. It makes it where your weight hits that ring. If you don't use a bobber stopper, of course. It makes it where your weight hits that ring. So if you want to fish, it makes it kind of in that aspect, a free Jika rig. Free Jika. Free Jika. So it makes it where that bobber, where your weight hits that ring. And then same thing still applies. It can move up and down, but one thing it's not doing is that eye. See, that eye is not big enough to wrap around the bend of that hook. And you're using something that's free floating, like a last tag. So it's going to raise your hook up and it's going to bring it down. You want something that floats really high. Another thing that I found that works really good with this is any worm that doesn't have, like your floating worms, like your not really Z-Man, because all Z-Man bait pretty much floats, but your net bait, your Zoom, your big bite baits, all your floating worms. They don't. Reason why they're called floating worms is because they don't have that much salt in them. They do a really good job. They still somewhat sink. They don't float, but they sink a lot slower. So there's that. But they do a phenomenal job. So instead of coming up, like when you throw slack to it, it'll actually push the worm and it'll still like slowly pull down. But it's not going to rise by throwing slack. You have to pick up, basically pop your rod tip, let that weight pop up off the bottom, then let that weight come back down and throw slack to it, and then that worm will slowly flutter down. Then do the same thing over and over again. Usually I don't do it all the way back to the boat. Your main bite is going to come when that worm's fluttering down. So once you pop it up in the air a couple times and nothing's taking it, go ahead and reel it in, throw it again. Usually what I do is, like, if I know there's a bank and I know there's some good cover there and I think there's fish there, I'm going to fish that bank pretty thorough. I'm going to make sure that I'm not missing much. So I'm going to basically pick my, by every 5 or so foot, especially if the water's dark, if the water's dirty, I'm going to do it every 5 or so foot. But if the water's clear, maybe every 10 foot. Just making sure you're giving the bass time enough to see your offering. All right, guys, that's been 20 minutes of me talking about free rig. If you like this, or you know somebody's thinking about doing, wants to try about free rig, share the video with them. Subscribe to the channel. Trying to get more content for you guys, stuff that I think really actually matters. There ain't but so much unboxing and stuff I can really do, and I'm trying to get back into, like I need to get out and do the swim bait reel review. There's a few other things I need to get out there and do. And the main thing I want to do is just go fishing with you guys. Just kind of show you how I approach a lake, or I've got some fishing footage I need to put all together. It was like me walking around that pond there in Lumberton. Just kind of show you some more of that. All right, guys, till next time, tight lines. Y'all stay safe out there.